I would like to briefly touch on the the principle, the means, the things behind an OTMA, a one-time movement approval. There are three levels to an OTMA. There's an OTMA 1, which is a serious one. OTMA 2, which is for an overweight car, and OTMA 3, which is more of a benign. It's for something that's not that high of a risk for the carrier to take into shop. Officially, I've been told that if your car is needing to go to a shop simply because its service due dates are up, FRA has told me, three different people in the FRA has told me that you do not need an OTMA to send a car to a shop for regular scheduled service because they want to make it pretty easy for you to go and send a car to a shop. You may decide, just as a standard of practice, it might be best to protect yourself and file an OTMA 3 and send a shop for normal service under a 3. If it's an OTMA 1, that means that that car has had something fairly serious. You can go on the internet and find the guidelines for an OTMA, and it does give a breakdown as to what it is that they say and specify are the requirements for all three. I currently have one of my cars had a leak, an internal leak. It did not externally leak, meaning that when I did the initial inspection, you couldn't smell anything, and there was nothing obvious, no frost, no ice, no noise. But when I went to go take car readings, I found out that the thermometer well was leaking internally. Then I have another car that's got a problem with a valve. Well, part of an OTMA is to essentially send up a flag, a large red flag, as a notification, as a warning to carriers that, hey, here's a car that has an acknowledged problem. Will you accept shipment of the car? And they invariably will say yes, unless there's some reason, and they may send somebody out, and they may demand more clarification. And then an OTMA also has to get you approval into a shop. So if you do have to do an OTMA, just be prepared for somebody, hopefully not you, but somebody in your organization is going to have to go and file all the proper paperwork to get it done. And I'm now going to divulge here and divert a little bit and go to personal opinion on things. And this is going to be my personal observation. This is just what I've seen. It's backed up by my own personal empirical data, documented things that I followed. And it's also a fair amount of conjecture based solely upon my knowledge and understanding of human nature. But there is a rule I've observed that the general attitude toward these rail cars is nobody really cares that much about these cars. They care only enough if they can ship it, or if they can ship it with problems and roll the dice assuming that they won't get caught. And to me, there's not one simple answer that says, oh, they're lazy, they're apathetic, or something like that, because it's easy to demonize and label somebody else like that. Because, it makes me think, oh yeah, I'm just, I just have to put up with other people's bad decisions and bad attitudes. In my opinion, one of the largest motivations for not reporting car trouble is the headache and the inconvenience and the very real financial impact on somebody like me who files an OTMA. You think about it, these cars were designed, they were built, they're shipped, everything's done for that car to go from one place to another as often as possible in the 40-year lifespan of this car. And so there's scheduled maintenance and things like that that we have to do to try to ensure the integrity of that car so we can maximize its use. Well, here it is, you go and you get a car and it's like, okay, I got a problem. Let's go do an OTMA. We got to. It's like, you really don't want to do it, but you got to do it. And you're thinking, okay, well, FRA and these other entities and everybody, you don't want a defective car in the system, so I'm sure that they will expedite this. My version of expediting and their version of expediting are not the same. It is not uncommon for a rail car to sit here waiting 1, 2, 3, 4 months just to get approval to go to a shop. And then it goes to a shop, and depending on how busy that shop is, it may sit another 1 to 6 months before it actually gets into the shop to get serviced. Well, while it's sitting on your property, you of course have to isolate that car. It means you got to put it somewhere on your very limited track space. And so it's going to sit there. You'll do something like I did. You may have to put a knuckle lock on it or do something on it, because once a car sits there for weeks or months on end, you never know what rail crew is going to come in. Your normal rail crew will know they won't touch it, but if there's a relief crew comes in from another city, another state, they may accidentally pull it. Happened to my place once. I accidentally pulled a car, and there were a lot of questions asked, and there was an investigation done. Well, if they would have given me that approval in a matter of 1 or 2 weeks instead of waiting 3 to 4 months, then that car wouldn't have been sitting there as long. And part of what you have to understand as the end user is there's a very limited number of men and women in the FRA that are tasked with reviewing and approving all of these hundreds, if not thousands, of OTMA requests filed every month across this country. There's very, very few of them. And so they have to prioritize, they have to kind of triage their job just the same way you and I triage our job. And so it's just the way it's set up. It's the nature. So we have to know the nature. We have to understand the parameters in which we're having to operate, and then act accordingly. And in my opinion, one of the big factors as to why there are so many cars being shipped on a regular basis that have anywhere from mild to very serious problems is no one wants to be stuck with it. It's a continual game of hot potato. No one wants to get stuck with it because the dum-dum that gets stuck with it, dum-dum here, you're the one that's going to sit on it. You're the one that's going to lose yard space. That's track space. That's track space you paid for. Somebody paid to build. An average track space to run track, by the time you factor in the cost of a rail bed and the rails and the install, you're somewhere in the neighborhood of $350 to $500 per foot is what you paid to have a set of track put in. And so you got a car that's 70 feet long, and then you have to have a cushion of 25 feet behind that. There's 100 feet. Then you got to keep another cushion of 25 feet between it and the next car. You're now 125 feet of track space you cannot utilize. And the FRA is guilty of the same thing that virtually every government agency is guilty of, is that is they do not really understand the motivation of human nature, of a simple carrot and a stick. The only thing they seem to understand or want to implement is the stick policy. And that is to beat you over the head with that stick. And then the only carrot they seem to understand is, look, you want me to stop beating you in the head with a stick? Okay, do whatever I tell you to do and wait on me, and then I'll get to you. And so that's your reward, stop being beat with a stick. I would like to suggest, if there's anybody out there that on some random chance from the FRA can hear this, you guys need to implement some sort of a carrot system. I don't have all the answers. Here's a suggestion. Throw out a good boy program. That every time you come out to somebody's place, you do an inspection, and they're really in compliance, and they're doing really well. Assign on their portfolio some good boy points that they've racked up. And if they go and they regularly catch or they find cars that have defects and they deal with it properly, they absorb the cost and the inconvenience of OTMAing a car the way you want, reporting things the way you want, and doing their active best effort to ensure the integrity and the safety of the entire system for the benefit of all, they should get more good boy points racked up on their behalf for doing that. And then when something bad happens, and say something they fail to do, and you come to their place and something happens and they're now worthy of a fine, and you can come and you can write them up for a fine, and you can offset the dollar expense of that fine against the racked up good boy points that they have accumulated over the months or over the years. And then that would you would still have the fine, you would still have the ding put into their file, you know that they did it, and that's reason enough for you to come maybe do another inspection sooner. But give them a good boy point. Show them something tangible that you acknowledge their good efforts, and you acknowledge the fact that yes, it is inconvenient, and not just inconvenient, but it is a financial strain on the end user to take a car, or here I'm sitting on 2 cars. Some of you probably have sat on more than 2 cars. And to acknowledge the fact that it is a sincere, honest financial impact on you to do the right thing. And so we don't want to only keep hammering you. We want to do something to reward you. And some version of good boy points, in my opinion, is a start. It is something to consider. It may not be the end all, but I think it's something that governments should consider, because you say, that getting defect cars and problematic cars out of the system is good for everybody. Hard to argue with that. I really don't have an argument against that. But me, just like you, is happier when somebody else has to pay the price and not me. I agree with the principle. Well, part of it's one thing we both have learned, and we've also forgotten as American citizens, is the price that we all have to pay to be active, good, responsible citizens. And inside our little world of rail is how to be a good citizen inside our own community. And there's very few, I'm sure, that are actively looking to make things worse. And the number one influence, in my personal opinion, as to why so many cars are shipped with problems is the fact that nobody wants to be stuck with the extra burden, because very few of us actually made the mistake. We just happened to be the one excuse me, whose yard that car happened to roll into. And so as just want to give you a heads up, if you go file for an OTMA, um, just be prepared for that. And I don't know who your rail carrier is. On mine is Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Southern has been continually upgrading and changing things. They have made the whole process of rerouting a car, because me, just like you, my cars are set up to when they're released empty, they're automatically rerouted to the refinery wherever I had them shipped from. And so, in order to send it to a shop, it's got to be, that rerouting has got to be broken for that car, and then it's got to be routed to the right place. Well, Norfolk has streamlined that and made it much, much nicer. So, Norfolk Southern, thank you. It is may seem like a little thing, but to somebody like me, it is just one less headache, and I have enough things to keep track of. And I don't do the computer stuff and the reporting like Norfolk Southern does. So every time I have to go do it, it's not like I OTMA every week. I OTMA about every year, but not that often. And I gladly, willingly forget as much of it as I can once that car is gone. So anything Norfolk Southern can do to make my life better, I'm grateful for it. And I think that's it. I think that's all I want to touch on this section. So thank you.